Everyone, it is 5 o'clock and I'll open the Planning Committee meeting. I note that we don't have a chair at the moment.
Director, I'd like to nominate Councillor Dutta to chair tonight's meeting.
Is there any other nominations?
No other nominations?
Is there any other nominations?
No other nominations? Okay. All those in favour of Mike chairing?
Aye.
Aye. Those against? No. Okay. No, you're right.
Thank you everyone, and thank you for the nomination and your confidence in me to sit here for just this meeting. I want to welcome everyone who's on live stream watching this meeting, and I also want to welcome each one of you here present. We have the Lord Mayor, Anna Reynolds, the Deputy Lord Mayor, Helen Burnett. We have Councillor Bill Harvey, and we have Councillor Zelinda Sherlock, Councillor John Kelly, Councillor Ryan, and then we have Councillor Ban. I wasn't too sure of the which one came first. That's also I always flustered a bit, and also Alderman Louis Bloomfield. I want to begin by acknowledgement to country. I want to acknowledge the people, the First Nations of this land, and I acknowledge very deeply and sincerely their resilience over these years and in the preservation of their culture and their tradition. I want to also acknowledge the leaders past, present, and emerging. And I also want to acknowledge the First Nations people or the Aboriginal people who live within our municipality. Thank you very much. We will now look at the agenda. Firstly, apologies. Do we have any apologies or leave of absence? No. Confirmation of minutes. Someone would like to move. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Carried unanimously. The next item is the supplementary items on the agenda.
There are no
We don't have any.
chair.
No. Thank you.
It's Marty's.
And then we have the indications of pecuniary and conflict of interest. Is there any conflict of interests? No. Thank you. Item number 4, Planning Authority. The deputation list. For tonight, we have 6.11 and 6.12, which is the View Street one, 83 View Street, and also 85 Athlin. Thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
Carried unanimously. Now, we are now acting as planning authority, and we have 6.11, the application 3, I'm sorry, oh it is, we've changed, I'm sorry, is it?
No, it's, I think you have an old version there.
Okay, so according to 6.11, unfortunately I have the wrong version in front of me. It's 83 View Street, Sandy Bay, and we have a deputation. So if you will be able to have the deputation for this particular one, and I understand the applicant, David Hall, is present here, and would you like to come, please, forward and use that microphone? You have 5 minutes, and when it's about 30 seconds left, I will advise you that you have 30 seconds to go. So when you finish, there will be questions afterwards. Thank you very much. Take a seat.
Lord Mayor and councillors, I own and live on the property, and the plans are a result of trying to improve pedestrian and vehicle access to the property, as well as fixing the issues of rot, detachment and cracking of the existing porch. I'm also hoping the proposal will reduce the incidence of vehicles blocking access to the property. The design has the least possible alterations to the property to achieve safe access, whilst satisfying the engineering requirements. The design is very similar to many recent developments in the precinct and has a very low impact on the streetscape. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Now, are there any questions? And we also have the Council Heritage Officer, Mick Booth, so if there are any questions, we'll be able to address that to him. Any questions?
I have a question, Chair.
Thank you.
Just through you, thanks Mr Hall, sorry there you are, for coming in. I'm just interested in how the new design will aid in stopping people blocking access to the block.
Because there's kind of two smaller spaces either side of the current driveway, and so they're too small, and so people try and park there, and their car end up going over the existing driveway.
So the application will widen the driveway, will it?
Yes, yep, it'll widen the driveway.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No? All right, someone would like to move the recommendation?
Happy to move.
Oh, thank you, I'm sorry. Yeah, my apologies.
I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey.
Chair, look, I do think this is a important building. It's part of the streetscape, and I think that as it looks now is much more attractive than how it might look once this renovation's been done. It's been recommended for refusal, and I'm going to support the officer's recommendation. Hence, I've moved the officer's recommendation for refusal.
Anyone else would like to speak to that?
Thank you, Chair. Look, I just want to support the officer's decision here. I think that it's incumbent on us to consider the streetscape in heritage areas, and in this particular instance, the loss of the veranda at the front is a significant change to the street-facing side of the dwelling. But it also, if you can imagine, if every single house in Hobart suddenly decided to put a concrete apron and parking in heritage areas, the effect that that would have on our important historic and heritage listed precincts. So while I do feel for the owner and the proponent, I can't support allowing the front of a heritage overlay house to be demolished in this manner.
Anyone else? No, can I? No, okay, I'll put that recommendation. All in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone against? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation. We now move to the second item, 6.1.2, 85 Atheling Avenue and 78 Atheling Avenue. Again, we have a deputation here tonight, and we have Representative Chris Collins, who is representing a number of residents from Ruth Drive. So would you please come and speak, and then you have, as I said, 5 minutes, and when you have 30 seconds left, I will let you know. And at the end of that, we'll have questions.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you, Committee. I speak on behalf of 16 residents, adjoining residents. We submit to that Council has erred in assessment of this development. Development is a significant intensification akin to medium density development. It's at odds with the local character. It significantly impacts amenity of existing and future residents. Performance solutions fail to demonstrate compliance. We raise concern with matters of planning and process. Residential density is non-compliant. The scheme states area per dwelling must exclude access strips. The TASCET hearing that Council relies on made no determination in relation to this matter. Some portion of the land must be access strip, otherwise there is no access. Yet compliance has been determined contingent on there being no access strip. Adjacent properties experience unreasonable loss of amenity. Western properties have a field of view that will be comprised entirely of buildings and concrete. Council states the townhouse-style development in 4 groups will minimise the perception of bulk. These cojoined dwellings, visually a building, are such substantially larger, vertically and horizontally, than any nearby building. The bulk scale, density and orientation cause significant visual impact. Private open space is insufficient for 3 to 4 bedroom dwellings. There's unreasonable loss of amenity by overshadowing. One space is just 33% the size of the acceptable solution. 69% of that area is in shade. The remainder receives only 3 hours of sunlight. It's shocking that Council have determined these spaces as adequate by stating sufficient for some less intensive forms of children's play. No common open space is provided. The nearest playground is more than 1 kilometre away. There's no reasonable space for gardening as photosynthesis requires sunlight. Car parking is non-compliant. There are only 3 visitor parks. On-street parking is more than 150 metres from the furthest dwelling. There's no footpath. The other multiple dwelling developments rely on on-street parking. The nearest bus stop is 425 metres from the site. Buses operate on weekdays only, and there are only 6 buses per day. The site is 1.7 kilometres from the nearest shop. The location of rubbish bins is non-compliant for odour and noise. Bins are located 1.2 metres from private open space. There's an additional 65 vehicle movements per day. There's a light spill issue from both driveway segments. The permit condition for 78 Athleen does not have effect on 85 Athleen Avenue, therefore light trespass is not mitigated. Light spill from both driveway segments significantly impacts the amenity of 41 Ruth Drive. Council's assessment refers to landscaping along the southern boundary. There is no landscaping plan nor mention of landscaping in the application. If landscaping is the intention, then a landscaping plan should be a condition of the permit. Excavations more than 3.5 metres occur 7 metres from the existing tree. Encroachment is 20% into the tree protection zone. Council states the developer is strongly encouraged to explore avenues to protect the tree. We welcome the commitment to retain the tree, however seek surety via retention, for retention via permit condition. Such a condition would be in line with Council's commitment to reducing canopy loss. We're not satisfied the development is compliant for stormwater management. The concept designs were not included in the advertised documents nor made available. We highlight a lack of process and transparency on this matter. Some performance solutions in the application are deficient. We raise concerns regarding the role of Council as both designer and regulator and a potential lack of impartiality as it relates to the recompiling of performance solutions for this assessment. The Council's assessment also refers to a development in Sandy Bay. Whilst this error doesn't impact the assessment per se, it raises concerns of diligence with Council's assessment. We welcome the development of...
30 seconds to go.
Thank you, Chair. We welcome the development of this land and acknowledge the potential for multiple dwellings development. We're not opposed. However, the plans put forward clearly prioritise maximum lot yield, push the boundaries of the planning scheme and negatively impact amenity, health and comfort. On multiple grounds, we request Council refuse the application. However, if Council are satisfied with their assessment and their processes, we strongly request additional permit conditions as expressed in the representation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Collins, for your deputation. Are there any questions? Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, thanks for your deputation. You've stated you're not anti-development for the site. What would be acceptable? How do you see the site being developed as a, as a neighbour and a representative of a bunch of neighbours who are giving a deputation tonight?
Thank you. So as I mentioned, there are 16 parties to this application, and I have their names, which I'm happy to table. All parties recognise that there needs to be a softening of the landscape. There's a scale of density, particularly in the northern part of the development, which is taken in isolation as extremely dense development. It's almost entirely covering the lot at that northern extent. So some degree of softening through landscaping, a reduction in the number of dwellings to accommodate that point that I mentioned about access strips and density. We strongly are of the view that the proposed density is non-compliant with the acceptable solution. So that's basically it. So landscaping, a commitment to retention of the tree, and yeah, a landscaping plan to soften the visual impact and to mitigate against light spill.
Follow up. Have you had much interaction with the proponents of the development?
Had no interaction with the proponents of the development.
Any other questions? No, thank you very much, Mr. Collins, for your deputation. Appreciate it. You can now go back. Thank you. We have a second representative, Mr. Emmanuel Dallas. Thank you. Please take a seat, and when there's 30 seconds left, I'll let you know.
Thank you. Well, didn't break, so that's a good start. Hi, I'm Emmanuel Dallas. I'm the adjoining property owner, 78 Atheline Avenue, and I was actually a part owner of this particular block that we on-sold to a developer from the mainland. So just a couple of things. When well, the main thing for me is the stormwater interaction between the 85 Atheline and 78. That obviously I agree completely with the previous speaker and all his points that he's made there. But the one that concerns me the most is the fact that when I initially was part owner of the top block and my block at 78 Atheline Avenue, we actually were required to create a stormwater design plan, which included stormwater treatment. Now, that treatment plant is actually on our block, which is 78 Atheline Avenue. And it's now, that part of the lot, which includes a house, has been strata titled. So I'm looking at the plans and I'm trying to find how they're going to drain this stormwater from 85 Atheline Avenue into a stormwater system. Now, it's a single page for what is basically 10 units and 340 square metres of roadway with no detail. At the moment, the road, which is a 7.2 metre roadway, drains to the bottom of the road, which is basically the top of my my block. That then drains to the right-hand side and then passes through 78 Atheling Avenue into a stormwater treatment system. Now, at the moment, when I originally designed the roadway, it was only for 8 units, and that's, you know, the plans that we sold this block to the future developer. But obviously, he's seen fit to try and expand the number of units on there to benefit to him financially, because as we read in the paper, developers just basically get an approval for units and then on-sell without any intention of looking at the amenity, the neighbours. They want to sell the maximum number of units on a block. So it's a purely money-making venture. However, back to the point of the stormwater. So on this plan, there are no details on the stormwater. There is no way they can drain that to council infrastructure without passing through the allotment, Unit 1. Now, we haven't been asked to provide any consent to this, to the stormwater design, which is to be provided as a professional engineer as well, there is no capacity in that system for any further stormwater treatment. Therefore, I believe that this application is invalid. The design for the stormwater treatment has to be included at this stage, and it will be clear that the existing stormwater treatment system has to be upgraded, and the party which actually houses that stormwater treatment has to be privy to this application. Currently, they're not. So I can't see how this could proceed any further. The stormwater design is paramount to this. It's completely deficient in detail, and I don't think the council, I don't know how it got to this stage. Also, by the way, we did offer our services to the owner and actually know the architect designing this, and I offered my services at any point to discuss the stormwater, the number of dwelling units. We were ignored. The developer is just basically designing to sell. So this is the result of someone just ignoring amenity, ignoring neighbours, ignoring us as neighbours below, just to maximise the number of units on his property. It's not right. And I don't think the council can really, without further information, continue on with this development. I agree completely with the previous owner, the previous speaker, about maximising the development. We now look at a two-layered set of apartments, direct within basically 7 metres of our property. So we see a roadway, we see a massive house in front of it, 3-storey, and beyond that another 3-storey house. Units 5, 6 and 7 have 14 square metres of private open space. The minimum standard is 40. You can only reduce the standard if you are more than 1.8 metres above ground level, which they're not. They're dug into the ground. We've got looking at 4 metre high walls, just so the developer can get his extra 2 units. It's a travesty. I strongly urge the council to reject this application.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dallas. Now, are there any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Through you to Mr. Dallas. So you're saying that there's detention, like stormwater detention on your property?
The stormwater treatment system. It's we have to remove the hydrocarbons from the roadway. Now that system is in Lot 1, which has been strata titled, and it's on its separate title. And that treatment system is wholly contained in that site.
Okay, I'll ask the officers in relation to permission and so forth. So thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. Anyone else? Councillor Lubega.
Thank you, Chair, through you. Thank you, Mr. Dallas, for coming in. I just wanted to ask about the stormwater treatment system as well. Were you required to pay for that, or was that installed?
I paid for it, yeah, $20,000.
$20,000. That's the answer to my question.
That's the cost of it now, and this developer is not required to do anything. In fact, it's not detailed. If it's detailed, then we can discuss it, because he'll realise that the stormwater needs to be upgraded. If Lot 1 is not part of this, it's an invalid application.
Right, thank you for your answer. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Pesson.
And just to clarify, Mr. Dallas, the stormwater treatment plant that was installed as part of building the new roadway for this site prior to it being sold to this developer. Is that correct?
No.
No. What was the purpose of the?
The purpose of that was, I've got an approval for 8 units on my block. The council in their wisdom said, we cannot allow you to build any houses until you build 100% of the stormwater treatment system. Not part, not a little bit of it, the entire $20,000 cost. So that was a condition of getting a building permit for Lot 1, for my first house.
Thank you for clarifying.
So can I just clarify? So that...
Councillor Sherlock and then...
Yep.
I just wanted to clarify, so just on the back of that question, so the stormwater treatment plant that you're talking about,
yes.
it only can accommodate for 8 units?
No, it accommodates for the road. Obviously at a starting point when I was asked to provide a design, I had a design done for 8 units on the top block. So basically a straight road and 8 units, mirroring my block, which is basically a road and 8 units. And so the roadway falls from 85 to 78 and I've got a curb and gutter system. It goes then into a last pit, and then a 300 diameter main that runs into the approved Hobart City Council stormwater lot connection, which I had to upgrade as well to 300. Between the lot connection and the pipeline in the rear of the property is a stormwater treatment system, which is basically a bypass tank which has filters inside. So that's been installed, paid for us. It's got limited capacity. It will certainly not be able to cater for this additional roadway.
So effectively what you're saying is because it was only built for the road, it
Correct.
will not accommodate for 10 units?
No.
Right, thanks.
Councillor Harvey.
No, it's done, yep.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any other questions? No. Thank you very much, Mr. Dallas,
Thank
for
you.
your deputation. Appreciate it. And now we have the applicant, Phil Cottrell, who is here on behalf of the owners. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to you tonight.
Just able to speak to the mic, please.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. As you'd be aware, the application has been recommended for approval by council officers. There has been a number of items raised by representatives in the representations and tonight. In the agenda report, there is detailed information provided from the referral officers in council, which has addressed a number of the concerns raised by representations, including information regarding stormwater. Further detailed plans and a report were prepared regarding stormwater, and there were quite a lot of detailed discussions with council's stormwater engineers as part of the application. That has been reflected with a number of conditions on the permit relating to stormwater, and further detailed design is required, which is fairly standard process for an application where some of that further detail needs to be worked through. The engineers on the project, ADG, weren't available tonight, but there has been further information that was submitted as part of the application that looks into further design details around stormwater. Just to address some of the other concerns raised, the architectural plans do indicate areas for landscaping on the site. The waste storage area issue, originally there was a window to one of the units that opened out onto a vacant sort of space, a corridor before reaching the waste storage area. That was raised as an issue by council officers, and we provided some additional information which has resulted in, I believe, the first condition on the permit, which requires that window to be relocated to the southern elevation to avoid those issues in terms of odour from the waste storage area. There was another item raised in relation to a tree on the site in the southwestern corner, a mature eucalyptus. The developer intends to retain that tree. There will need to be some additional investigations done regarding the tree protection zone and the structural root zone as well, just to work out the details around what might be required to retain that tree. But we understand, and the developer understands, that retaining that tree would be very much a positive and would assist in amenity for surrounding properties. There were some details regarding the Part 5 agreement on site as well. There's a further assessment by Council's engineer in the agenda outlining the responses to the Part 5 agreement in relation to landslip. and a further report was provided as part of the application to provide further details regarding that. And there have also been additional conditions applied on the permit to address those issues as well. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any questions? Thank you, Councillor Blueberg.
Thank you, Chair. Just through you, thank you, Mr. Gartrell. I just wanted to go back to when you discussed areas for landscaping that are shown on the plans. What's the square meterage of that landscaping sort of per property?
I'm just trying to bring up the plans at the moment. Might take me a second to do a little bit of a few measurements just to work that out.
If you like.
Yeah, that's fine. Yep.
We'll come back to that. You just come back to that, Chair.
Any other questions? The Lord Mayor first and then the Deputy. Thank you.
There was just a question around access through the site. Is there, I think one of the representatives raised there not being a footpath through the site?
That would relate, I believe, to the internal driveway. There are units that open, 3 units, I believe, that open out onto the driveway, and then that driveway extends up to the units above and to the units further along. I'd need to have a look at the traffic impact assessment provided as part of the application, just to look at the details there. So I can open that up as well and have a look through that if you'd like.
Oh, that's all right. I'll ask the officers about it.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Gartrell, just again, if you could explain or allay any concerns in relation to the stormwater plan. Is there likely to be a significant amount of stormwater on this site?
I will just open up the report. There will be an increase from the additional impervious areas created by the driveways and also the additional roofed areas of the units. There is a drainage easement that runs sort of roughly centrally through the site where with existing infrastructure in there. So there were some further discussions with council officers around the details of the connection, potential connections into that infrastructure, and then there were further detailed discussions in terms of working out what the pre and post development flows would be and what additional works might be required to ensure that the system can be designed appropriately to accommodate the additional flow from the roofed areas and driveway.
And I think there might be a condition just in relation to the tree or some sort of advice. I just don't have it in front of me either, but oh, you've got that there. Thank you. It says, oh, the tree retention. Is that advice or is it a...
This is in the part 5, so question for Karen.
Okay.
Any other question? Councillor Kelly.
Through you, Chair. Did you reach out to the neighbours or have you had any discussion with the people living in that immediate area?
We have had some discussions with Mr. Dellis in regard to 78 Athleen Avenue regarding the design of the driveway. We haven't had any further discussions to properties along, I believe it's to the west along Ruth Drive. Those properties are elevated above the site. The topography sort of rises up generally toward Ruth Drive, and those properties are situated above the site. And due to the response to the topography for the proposed development, the interaction between the proposed units, 2 properties along Ruth Drive, is relatively minor in terms of the issues that we often see in terms of height adjacent to other residential properties and potential impacts as a result of overshadowing, overlooking in those aspects, which wouldn't be an issue to the west. There are properties to the south, one property in particular, and I think in that instance that is where the retention of the tree in the southwestern portion of the site would be ideal. if some further, we will need to do some further investigations just to work out how that tree can be retained, and that would be a positive contribution to both the site and for surrounding properties as well.
Thank you. Any other questions? No.
Come back to me, if that's okay. So,
Robert.
just through you, Chair, again, I was just asking about the amount of areas for landscaping that are shown on the plans, sort of, and it'd be good to break it down to a meterage per property, I guess. That's the figure we're looking for.
Yeah, of course. I'm just trying to load up the plans. I'm having a little bit of trouble at the moment. I would initially be looking at determining the total areas of the site that will be landscaped, and then looking at individually the areas of private open space and how much space within those areas is suitable for private plantings and so forth, in addition to the areas of landscaping that are indicated for those units.
Also, just to clarify, that the landscaping we're talking about is not the private open space for each unit. It's not, it's a separate area of land.
Primarily, yes. The areas that aren't covered with driveway and the roofed areas of each of the units and the allocated areas of private open space for those units, the remaining areas of the site that would remain pervious will all be landscaped.
Just one further question through you, Chair. There's just a part of the report that talks about the stormwater system, and it just notes that detailed stormwater systems have not been provided. Is that accurate?
Not to my knowledge. There was a comment by one of the representatives, a notation in the officer's report indicating that further designs for stormwater weren't provided, but there is also another comment indicating that those documents were provided, but they weren't included in the advertised set. That is my understanding. We have submitted further design drawings and a report looking at stormwater, and we did have a number of discussions with Council's stormwater engineers about how that would work, and it was determined that further detailed design work would be necessary to make sure that appropriate upgrades, if required, would be undertaken, and further documents to reflect that would be submitted to Council for approval as part of the several conditions on the permit that relate specifically to stormwater and drainage.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any other question? No? Thank you very much, Mr. Carter. Thank you. Appreciate it. You can now go back to your seat. And are there any questions to the officers? Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to the Director. I noticed that the black gum is listed in the Part 5 agreement section within the report. Is this as strong as we can be in terms of retention of that tree, or is there any further strengthening that we could apply this evening?
Through you, Chair, given the fact that it's not a significant tree, it's not protected by other parts of the planning scheme such as the biodiversity code, yes, I'm afraid this is as good as it gets.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Question for the Director. Director, just in relation to the point that Mr Delos made to have consent in regard to the stormwater, was that necessary in this case?
Through you, Chair, the application is proposed on this site alone, and we've done an assessment based on this site. There is some treatment shown on the plans, and our stormwater team have assessed that as being capable of meeting the scheme, and as indicated by the applicant, there is substantial further work to be done to demonstrate that all of the stormwater requirements are met.
So just a supplementary question. So have we, in past situations, do we usually get more information regarding stormwater?
Through you, Chair, it's absolutely standard to require concept level at planning stage and then to require detailed design as part of what we call condition endorsement, which is the way that developers can spend a certain amount of money to get the planning permit, then they can go through the next expensive phase of doing detailed designs.
One final question, just in relation, I mean, the density is obviously brought up as an issue by representors. Is that density suitable for that particular area of Lena Valley?
Through you, Chair. Yes, the officer has assessed this as being an appropriate level of density. The fact that the application doesn't meet the acceptable solution doesn't mean that it's non-compliant. It simply means that it needs to demonstrate compliance with the performance criteria, and it's our view that it does meet that requirement.
Yeah, I'm happy to move the item if it hasn't been moved.
Can I just ask, the Lord Mayor wanted to ask a question and then we'll ask
Yeah,
it.
yeah, I'm happy to move it anyway, just for the purposes of further discussion.
Yeah. Yeah, the stormwater is interesting. It does seem like there's a lot of conditions there, and it does. I just wonder, is there something that should be more in our planning scheme about stormwater, so that we're not sort of loading all the stormwater sort of issues that we could find down the track are intractable. And we sort of do it post-planning. It just seems a bit, a little bit strange.
Through you, Chair, it's not uncommon in across the board really with for example, in a subdivision context, there's a substantial amount of work that's done after the planning permit is granted. I mean, we would have serious complaints from developers if we made them do all of the detailed design up front, because they don't know whether they're going to get a permit or not. They prefer to know that they're going to get a permit before they invest that money.
Yeah, I guess...
Standard way that we approach it.
Yeah, I guess just the question raised that potentially there is no provision for the stormwater and it'll have to use Mr Dallas's facility. That does seem like a pretty fundamental...
Through you, Chair, the conditions are phrased in a way so that they must demonstrate that they can comply with our requirements, or they won't be able to proceed with the development. So it's not as if it will be built and then we'll see how it goes. They'll need to demonstrate that before construction commences.
And that means building their own, sort of potentially their own system that has nothing to do with Mr Dallas's system?
Through you, Chair, yes, absolutely.
And, what was my other question? It's dropped out of my mind, sorry. No, I've forgotten that.
Landscaping path through there?
No, no, not at the moment. It was just on the stormwater.
Density, tree?
No, it wasn't the stormwater, but it's dropped out of my mind. No, might come back to me later.
All right. So the deputy has moved. Is it okay? We take it and we can then debate that. Is it okay? All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, deputy. Now, anyone would like to speak? Councillor Loberg.
Thank you, Chair. I just had a question through you for the director. Could we just get some clarity on what's going on? It's page 144. Where it talks about the stormwater system. So 6.17.2 is quite a long sentence. It says the proposal includes new impervious area, more than 600 square metres, and new car parking is provided for more than 6 cars. Detailed stormwater systems incorporating water-sensitive urban design principles have not been provided. And then we go down to 6.17.5, saying a stormwater system and treatment plant, I guess is the word missing there, has been assessed to have incorporated stormwater drainage systems sufficient to achieve the quality and quantity targets. Can I just get some explanation about what's gone on there?
Through you, Chair. So there are two ways that the applicant can meet the planning scheme. One is through meeting the acceptable solution, and the other is through the performance criteria. The acceptable solution is a quantifiable target that they need to meet, and those first 3 paragraphs are basically saying they haven't met those requirements. So then we move on to the next stage, which is to assess the application against the performance criteria. That's set out in paragraph 6.17.4, and the following paragraph says that the assessing officer has reviewed the plans and it considers that it meets the requirements of that performance criteria.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
I did remember my other question.
Okay, Lord Mayor.
Just around like if this block is unsold and, you know, nothing happens on there for the next 2 or 3 years, what are our internal processes that ensure that all of these kind of things would actually be put in place before, like, would the conditions go with the sale of the property?
Through you, Chair, the permit attaches to the land. It isn't granted to a particular individual, so it will absolutely pass with the land if it's sold. But so that the next owner would be equally bound by the conditions if they want to go ahead with this development. And
I also haven't looked at the conditions closely enough. Does it include a landscaping plan to be approved?
Through you, Chair, not at the moment.
We include that as a condition? Because I know that's something that is often included, that it has to be approved by the director to be satisfied.
Through you, Chair, we could include, I note that there's a provision relating to the building envelope, and if the landscaping was required to offset the bulk of the building, then we could include our standard landscaping provision for a plan to be provided, and that has, as I understand it, already been provided on the plans, so I don't expect that will be resisted by the applicant.
Okay.
So, can I just ask a question for clarification? So that's already been included?
No, Chair, that's not at the moment,
right.
But so that would have to be an amendment.
Okay.
I'm happy to accept that.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Lundberger.
Just through you again to the director, I just want to talk about the private open space. We heard one of the representatives say it's 14 square metres per property, it should be 40 square metres. Can we just get some clarification of that from you, Director?
Through you, Chair. When we talk about should be, I think we're talking about the acceptable solution there. So we're now into performance criteria assessment, and there's no doubt that this is quite a dense development of this site, and with that comes some compromises, for example, to the private open space. Having said that, the assessing officer has reviewed the plans and is satisfied that the requirements of the planning scheme are met.
Thank you.
Through you, Chair, Director. So if this was to go to TASCAT, it would be a very good chance that if we rejected it, it wouldn't stack up. As far as your opinion of that would be?
Through you, Chair, if the planning committee was to reject this proposal, then the officer who assessed it would not be able to provide evidence to the tribunal. We'd need to see whether there was a private consultant who was willing to support a refusal on any of the grounds that the planning committee thought were appropriate. So it's a little bit difficult for me to comment without having had those discussions with private consultants.
Yeah, it's just it's good to get a good of a sense of, look, it's sort of pushing it, or look, it's a lay down. Is there as far as, you know, our contestability of that goes.
Through you, Chair, I'm confident with the officer assessment.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I guess it was sort of similar to Councillor Kelly. I mean, sometimes when an elected member is keen to propose a refusal, they ask for conditions for refusal to be prepared by the officers. I mean, and the residents have raised a number of things that they believe are non-compliant. I mean, do you think there's any chance that this could be taken to, that, you know, that there were some areas that might be debatable, or there might have been planning cases, you know, around the density issue or private open. I know we've had a couple of tribunal findings on private open space. Didn't the Newtown one deal with that one?
Through you, Chair. So the assessment does rely on the tribunal's decision about the orientation of private open space. That decision has been appealed to the Supreme Court. So potentially the Supreme Court may reach a different conclusion to the planning tribunal. So I can't make any comment about the likelihood of that.
Was that about size, or was that about orientation of private?
Through you, Chair, the orientation and being capable of accessing sunlight, recognising that the reality is that not all dwellings would achieve the certain amount of sunlight.
Which isn't necessarily the case here. This one's more about size.
Through you, Chair, it's to do with size, but also the orientation.
Oh, right, okay. So that would be the main, in terms of density, there's been a bit of tribunal.
Oh, through you, Chair. Yeah, no, I mean, it's all I can say, I guess, is that we've done a thorough analysis, and that the officer who's done the assessment is confident that it meets the scheme. There's nothing in the officer assessment which has caused me any concern. There will be times when officers say, "Oh, this was a bit of a line ball." That has not occurred on this occasion, so I'm confident with the assessment that's been done.
Any other comments? Okay, can I put that to vote then? All in favour with the recommendation that's been made by the deputy that we go along with the staff recommendation? All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you very much for the deputation, everyone. We now move to 6.1.3, 3 Gregson Avenue and 5 Gregson Avenue. The applicant team is here, so if there are any questions, remember we deferred this the last planning meeting that we had. So if there are any questions, I'm sure you are now at liberty to ask for clarification. Thank you, Deputy.
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered, perhaps through to the Director, obviously we have this memo that you've provided us after some questions were forwarded to you, but could you just describe what arrangements there have been made with Homes Tas in relation to possible access through the site?
Through you, Chair. There was a meeting with Homes Tas representatives, and they have indicated that they would be supportive of an alternate path through the area, not through the site. I will indicate, though, as I have recorded in my memo, that this very area will be coming to the council with its political hat on for the November meeting, and a master plan for this area will be proposed as part of the local area mobility plan. And in my view, that is the appropriate forum for the proper consideration of access through this area.
Anyone else? Any other questions? Any other comments? Councillor Luberger.
I guess it's the same issue, Chair. Thank you. Through you to the Director. We've sort of been told an informal path is feasible. Are we able to get any idea of where that path might actually travel?
Through you, Chair. The path would be, there are various options, but around the site and then continue on along the same fence line. I will just, sorry?
Just up the hill a little bit around the site, is that?
Yes.
Yeah, right.
I will just remind the elected members that there are only 3 discretions that are relevant for you to consider, and the access through the site or around the site is not one of those considerations.
Can I ask though, can we put it in as an advice clause that, you know, that the council requests that Homes Tasmania work with council officers on and access in the neighbourhood or something?
Through you, Lord Mayor, frankly, I'm reluctant to include that as an advice. It might suggest that you are taking into account irrelevant considerations when you're finalising the permit, so I wouldn't want to expose you to criticism on that front.
Yeah, but advice is just advice, isn't it? And planning is more than statutory planning, it's strategic planning as well.
Through you, Chair, no, in this situation you are required to assess the discretions that have been triggered, and then at the November council meeting you'll be given an opportunity to consider the strategic issues.
Oh, what's that? That's the
When we
mobility
discuss the
plan.
land, yeah.
Yeah, it'd be unusual to in the mobility plan say, and please work with Homes Tasmania on this one little pocket corner. But anyway, I guess it's, yeah, that's fine.
So just in relation to one of the discretions, which is stormwater, we were provided some information by a representative recently, but from many representatives who had considerable concerns about the runoff from a spring and the placing of this development. Through you again to Ms Avey, there is only one view that we have in relation to this stormwater management, or have we considered it from others' perspectives as well? Is it only from the developer's application?
Through you, Chair, I am aware that there have been discussions with Taswater about sewerage line, and I think there were some challenges for various reasons. And the current version of the plans is something that's supported by Taswater. And in terms of the stormwater assessment, again, we are satisfied that the level of detail that's been provided is sufficient to comply with the scheme, and that we've asked for further details to be provided through the condition endorsement process.
And one final question, hopefully it will be a final question, and it's more of a general question, which you might be able to help me with. It's just in relation to use of a piece of land over time. If it's a continued use, so in this sort of situation it's been an access, used as an access area, what kind of standing is there legally in relation to that?
Through you, Chair, there's legislation which governs local government highways, and highway is sounds like a gigantic big road, but actually that can cover scenarios like this, which are walkways essentially. The legislation's clear in that there needs to be dedication of land to be a highway, or for those rights to formally exist, and that there's no process for recognition of informal rights to the extent that they can be protected in an ongoing basis. It's not like existing use rights can accumulate in a planning sense. For those rights to be formal, it needs to be declared to be a formal walkway.
So it's not like I keep thinking of adverse possession, but it's not really adverse possession. So the representatives would not have any rights as a community to use that land over time?
Through you, Chair, that's correct.
Any other comments? Any other questions? No. Has someone moved the recommendation?
Chair, look, I don't particularly think it's a great development, but there's every right to do that development on the site. It's their land. They've met the planning requirements. If it did go to appeal, we would have strong grounds to win that appeal, I imagine. But the representatives are also entitled to take it to an appeal if they choose to. So I'll move for approval, reluctantly, because I don't think it's a fantastic development on that site, but they've got the right to do it. They own the land. They've put in an application. It's been approved by the council officers, and I know that the locals are not happy about it. However, it's a legal application which is recommended for approval. So to knock it off tonight, I think would just lead us into TASCAT and probably a reversal of our decision down the track, and 6 months or so, however long it takes of going through a process. I know there'd be what's the first part of the process? A mediation, and if it did get past the wasn't resolved in mediation and it went to an appeal, probably the council would win, or the proponent would win, I should say. So I'll move the item for approval.
Thank you. Any other debate, discussion? Councillor Luberger. Councillor Posselt, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. No, that's all right. Thanks, Chair. Just through you to the Director, what advice would you give councillors when they're assessing an application when it comes to expert advice? So expert qualified advice, particularly in this instance, we have representatives telling us that the stormwater plan is not fit, which also occurred in the previous item that we looked at. Do you have any generic advice for how we are to interpret those two differing opinions when sitting as the planning committee?
Through you, Chair. I guess for me, having worked so closely with the stormwater unit or waterways unit for so long and knowing how detailed they are with their assessments, I have every confidence that when it gets to committee and it's recommended approval, that they've done the hard work, they understand that this can work, even if there are some further details to be done down the road. There are the odd occasion, for example, with the Campbell Street proposal, where we genuinely had two consultants who had different views about things, and that one was resolved at appeal reasonably swiftly. So I'm very confident in the capability of our stormwater engineers to do an assessment and to bring it to the committee and confidently recommend approval.
Thank you. And one supplementary, Chair. Should there be a flooding issue or a stormwater management issue after this is presumably built and approved, where does the liability sit?
Through you, Chair, there is an obligation under the Urban Drainage Act for one property owner not to allow stormwater to drain onto another property. So if that is occurring, then we can either rely on that legislation or we can rely on the planning permit conditions to require something to be done so that that doesn't keep on happening.
So the liability would sit with the applicant, not the council. Thank you.
Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. Look, I agree with previous comments. I'm not really happy with this. I wouldn't really want to be living in that area. I believe the whole application could have been a bit more tweaked a bit better to satisfy the residents. As with our previous applicant tonight, once again, I wasn't happy with that, but we are shackled by what the planning scheme says, and our decisions can only be as good as that. So in a sort of slightly regrettable way, I will be supporting this application tonight, but for future reference for the organisation, who I know do good things and have a lot on their plate, any bit to keep the neighbours happy, I just believe, should be going to the maximum length to do that. And perhaps I believe with the laneway and siting this building up a bit higher up the hill, that could have been achieved despite it still conforming with the planning scheme. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other deputy?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, I think this has been, we have discussed it at the last planning meeting, and quite a good discussion to tease out these particular issues of the community. I think these are real, and I suspect that this hasn't been developed prior to this because of its position in this kind of gulch. It's going to lose sun very early. There's that spring running down. I think that might be on our land, so that's going to be interesting further down the track, because that does flow, and it's very, very wet underfoot in that particular area. I feel that this is a bit of a dud deal for community members, and certainly feel that if we can get any sort of pathway through what is quite a steep area with some significant trees, I think it's going to be quite difficult to have that running through there. So I just think it is a problematic development application. I know that there is an absolute need for homes to be building, but it's certainly not something that I think is the best use of this land.
Any other one? Any? Councillor Lubberger.
Thank you, Chair. I just might ask a final question of the Director through you, if that's okay, and then I'll contribute my contribution. The point just raised by the Deputy Mayor regarding the spring that we know exists on the land above this, what if this development is built and that spring pops out after rain and starts sending significant amounts of stormwater onto this newly constructed building, are we going to be liable for that particular issue, given the stormwater looks like it's coming off our land?
Through you, Chair, we have an obligation, the council has an obligation to drain the urban area. So yes, if there's stormwater overflowing from our land, we do have an obligation to address it. but that's not changed by the introduction of this application.
All righty, thank you, Director, and thank you, Chair. Look, this is a very difficult application, as everyone else has noted. It's not something that I'm particularly comfortable with, but we are shackled by the planning scheme. I've spoken to the Council's waterways engineers. They are satisfied with the drainage and flooding issues, that they have been adequately addressed. Although I do note that advice has been added to the application regarding groundwater and soil saturation issues that were raised by the community. I am happy to hear that a solution has been identified to maintaining the existing walking track. I do think this is a serious issue regarding this application, and I also believe that a similar issue arose in South Hobart several years ago due to another Homes Tasmania application. I just would ask that Homes Tas actually pays a little bit more attention to retaining essential community infrastructure in future applications, because I do believe that would benefit everyone in the community, including the new residents. But yes, look, on the basis of the way the planning scheme is put together, I do feel we have a very limited ability to reject, and if we did reject it, we would lose in the tribunal. So on those grounds, I'll reluctantly support the application. Thank you, Chair.
Anyone else? Councillor Basalt.
Thank you, Chair. Look, just very passing comment. I completely agree with everything that's been said by my colleagues. However, as Chair of Mobility, and I know it's not a planning issue, but it's important to the community, as Chair of the Mobility Portfolio, I've made every effort to try to get council staff to work with Homes Tasmania, and I made very strong comments at the last planning meeting about retaining the desire line along the fence line. Those negotiations continue, as I understand it, and we will have further updates through the local area mobility plans for the northern catchment area, which, as the Director has stated, will come to Council in the November meeting. I recognise the importance of that desire line, and within the limitations of planning, there's not anything that we can do to enforce that desire line. However, everything is being done in the background and outside of this forum to try to get a satisfactory result for the community. So I want to make that very clear to the community of Gregson Avenue that we're doing everything we can, but otherwise we are shackled by the planning scheme, and this application seems to meet the requirements of the planning scheme.
Through you, Chair, and I think this is not the first time that we've had a application, possibly from the same applicant, where a pathway has been disrupted. Is there any way that we can actually refer these matters to the relevant director and possibly the portfolio, the specific portfolio, as a separate motion to take it on board?
Through you, Chair, I guess in this instance, or you're talking about a generic general approach, we could certainly attempt to do that. It would have its challenges in terms of identifying that early enough and fitting in with the statutory timeframes. That would be my main comment about that.
I just think that we have in the past had situations where pathways have been disrupted. It mightn't seem all that important when we're wanting to build housing. I understand that. However, there is a considerable concern for neighbourhoods. So this happens to be Newtown. It's been South Hobart previously. So perhaps there might be a means of doing that as a foreshadowed motion.
Yeah, you can move
Or
that after this
yeah,
matter.
question without notice, or
Okay, so can we take that later?
yes,
Okay,
sure.
thank you. Now, is there anyone else want to speak to this recommendation? Before, no, I'll put the recommendation. Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against?
No.
So we have, again, please, those in favour, put your hand up. Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Okay, we move on to 7.1.
Move the item.
Thank you,
Mary's a
Councillor Harvey.
arthritis issue.
Any questions?
I just had a comment, Chair. Just wanted to note that there's a total of 9 properties listed in the advertised and delegated decisions reports that are all conversions to short stay accommodation.
Okay.
We take that as noted. Any other comments? Any
We've
other
still got to put the
observations?
item.
Put the item.
Put it.
Receive and note. I'll put that.
Thank you.
All those in favour?
Yeah. All in favour?
I moved
Yeah.
it.
We're doing well.
The 7.2 delegated decision report. Anyone wants to question?
Just through you to the Director, Chair, is there anything of note in the delegated report?
Chair, I might ask Ms Ayres to respond to that. Perhaps, Councillor Loberger, were you inquiring about the advertised list or the delegated decision?
Oh, might as well do both. Yeah. Any highlights off both lists would be interesting.
We have 2 that are coming next committee meeting. One is for Ellerslie Road, which is a bowls club, but it's on council land, so there are some minor works to that. And the other is 199 Macquarie Street, which is a fairly large multi-storey extension to the existing building. That's coming both because it's a major application and because there have been 7 inspections.
Which one's that, sorry?
Number 3.
199 Macquarie Street, item number 3.
Any other?
Just through you, Chair, who's the applicant for that one? Just out of interest. Just put you on the spot.
I actually don't know that. I can find it for you.
It's okay, it's not important. Thank you.
Any other questions? Any other comments? No? I put that noted. All in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Carried unanimously. Questions without notice.
Yes, I'll do my best. Could there be consideration to ensure pathways remain through what is effectively has been used as reserve land? You might be able to help me with this, Director. And can that, as per 3 Gregson development and others, and can that be considered by the relevant portfolio committee?
Chair, I'll take that one on notice.
Any other questions? Thank you, Deputy.
Just in relation to the local provision schedules, I believe that the 60 days have expired. When are we likely to have that back for consideration?
Through you, Chair, I understand that it will be returning to the Planning Committee early in the new year. I would have to take any further detail on notice. Thank you.
Councillor Passau.
Thank you, through you, Chair. In the application for Athleen Court, there was a tree that was significant for the residents but not listed as significant. Had the council adopted a bylaw where all trees were protected, would we have been able to have stronger protection clauses for that tree? Obviously, theoretically.
Through you, Chair, yes, assuming that a bylaw was legally robust.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Lord Mayor.
Just around the tree removal in the delegated decisions at 292 Sandy Bay Road, was that the pine out the back of that house?
Through you, Chair, sorry, Lord Mayor, I can't. Which document are you referring to?
Oh, sorry, delegated decisions. There's a tree removal. Sandy Bay Road, 292 Sandy Bay Road.
Oh, I'll have to take that one on notice.
Take
Chair.
that on notice.
And can we get an update on what is happening with our planning reform around short stay accommodation? I know it's in the LPS, but that's still some time away. And the other pathway of, is that still being pursued?
Through you, Chair, yes, it is. We have instructed solicitors to assist us with that process, but I would need to take that on notice to get the further detail for you.
Isn't the first
Mr. Noy's
okay.
looking after that process.
No worries. It'd be good just to for everyone. This is the process of that we approved a while ago. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Just for you to the Director, do we as elected members have access to the list, to the higher level access to the state government list?
Through you, Chair, yes you do. If there are parts that are publicly accessible. I don't know whether elected members have a password to be able to access further details, but I can check on that for you.
Yes, because I understand, like through the council, it's just good for us to be able to do a lot of research and all that. So if that's possible, could we be advised, please? Thank you.
Councillor Hobart.
Thank you, Chair. Could we please get some advice on how long you can leave a sign up on your property before you need a planning permit? There's some big red and white ones that have been up for over a year now, and I'm wondering whether they've exceeded like an election period, or which is like 6 weeks, and whether or not they should now have planning approval to have those big red and white signs up, which have clearly been up for in excess of 12 months.
Through you, Chair, yes, we are overdue to provide some advice to the committee on that issue.
Any other questions? The Lord Mayor.
No, I was just going to say that I think there's already was some advice provided by Mr. Noy to a complainer about something similar on that a few months ago. But I'm sure that can be circulated to elected members.
Chair, if I may just respond to Councillor Harvey, because I made representations to our previous CEO on this matter, because it actually goes to cable car signs that are still up as well. Just assisting Councillor Harvey with his answer that a review of the policy, the sign policy, was going to be undertaken.
We'll take questions. Thank you.
Without debate.
Yep, no debate, thank you.
All right. Any other questions?
No.
No? Okay. Someone would like to move?
Happy to move. We go into closed.
Thank you. All in favour?
Yes.